I wanted to talk about this particular question. CNN's Christiane Amanpour. I have no idea how to say her name. That could be French. I'm not sure. But this bugs me, everybody, and this is why I have issues with the mainstream media. Maybe I have a bad read on it. Maybe my take isn't the best. But let's watch the clip here. We'll pay very close attention. What I want you to pay attention to is the question that they ask President Zelenskyy, and I'll give you my thoughts here on why I take such issue with this. So.
As was reported, President Trump, that Putin is only doing this and agreeing to talks because he's afraid of Trump. Did you tell him that?
Yes. I told Trump that Putin afraid of him. Yes, and he heard me. And now Putin knows.
The comedic timing in that answer on full display. But
and then she makes some comment about comedic timing. This pisses me off so much. Okay. Put yourself in the shoes for a moment of President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. His country, for the past, how long? I think over 3 years now. 2-3 years. For the past 3 years, his country has been brutally and violently invaded by an autocratic, dictatorial nation, superpower, that also happens to be a neighboring country to his. He is currently a wartime president. He is a president who is fighting for the future of his country, for the lives of many Ukrainian citizens and Ukrainian soldiers, and to preserve their way of life, their sovereignty as a nation. And while there's negotiations happening that he's already been excluded from, basically, because it sounds like Putin and Trump are negotiating without Zelenskyy, which is obviously super fucked up and should never happen. Ukraine should always be a part of any negotiation, period, because they're the ones being fucking invaded. They're the victim in all this. They're the biggest victim in all this. And some asswipe with CNN is gonna go up there and be like, so, we heard that you told Trump that Putin's scared of him. Did you tell him that? Think about it, guys. Think about it. What if Zelenskyy answers no? No, I did not tell Trump that Putin is afraid of him. Even if that's the truth. I'm not even talking about what is true here. What they're asking Zelenskyy may very well be true. But even if that is, even if the answer there, even if the answer was no, and that is accurate in that, let's say Zelenskyy didn't tell Trump that Putin's afraid of him, then what that's going to come across as in this interview, in this very sensitive place, on this stage where it's being broadcast internationally, because I believe this was a part of the security conference, right? What type of outcomes, what consequences would President Zelenskyy face if he answered that no, assuming no were the truthful answer for just a moment here? Trump has an insatiable ego. He has an ego that he cannot go without somebody complimenting it. This is why Trump is viewed, why he's so profoundly narcissistic. This is why he always surrounds himself with people who tells him what he wants to hear rather than people who tell him the truth on anything. If Zelenskyy answers no there, if that were the correct answer, he's potentially fucking himself and screwing over his whole country when it comes to those negotiations. So the point is that whether it's true or not, the answer he has to, my claim here is that he has to answer yes. He has no option but to answer yes, because no sounds like he doesn't, even if this isn't the logical conclusion everybody else comes to, what Trump would hear if Zelensky answered no is Trump would hear, Zelensky doesn't think Putin's afraid of me. He doesn't think Putin's afraid of me. I'll show him what to be afraid of, right? And Trump's going to have a retaliatory toddler rampage and possibly just fuck over Ukraine in all these negotiations that he's already cut them out of. So Zelensky is again trying to preserve the future of his nation, of his republic, of their sovereignty, their way of life in Ukraine. And so he has to answer yes, whether it's true or not. That's the point I'm making, is that they asked him a question to which there's only one answer if Zelensky truly wants to protect the people of Ukraine, which obviously he does. Obviously he does. He cares. You can tell he's a guy who cares deeply about his country, and he is a patriot, and he loves the people of Ukraine. It seems, right? He's to me, he seems like a very genuine and passionate guy. And then he points out the obvious thing is he goes, and now Putin knows, because you asked me this fucking question, that to which the answer potentially endangers my people and the well-being of my country. CNN, fuck off for asking this fucking question. I don't think I'm wrong on this. I think I'm right on this, because I think I don't know. I'm trying to think of an equivalent, right? Like, I don't understand like how you ask a president whose nation is actively being invaded whether or not he's basically glazed the president of the United States, who essentially holds in the palm of his hand the future of Ukraine. And he's also a fucking toddler. He's an emotional toddler. And you're going to ask the president of the nation being invaded, you're going to ask him this question? That's absurd. That is completely absurd. CNN has no journalistic integrity. I mean, this is why I've ditched the mainstream media, because I am so over this type of trash. I am so over this type of trash where they both sides everything so hard that they don't even know that they're fucking with international negotiations, potentially. Now, of course, Zelensky played it well, right? He answered humorously. He answered definitively. Yes, I told President Trump that Putin is afraid of him. And now Putin knows too, you fuckers. I'm gonna dislike that. Fuck that video. There's a way to answer. There's a way to ask a similar question, maybe, that doesn't put Zelensky in such a tight position. You know, Ukraine is an ally. Zelensky's not an evil president. Trump is probably going to try and frame him as such at some point. I guarantee it. Especially if these negotiations go sour at any point. But I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a good question to ask on this stage at this moment. It is. I would bet that a part of him felt deep and intense rage that he was asked such a question at such a sensitive time in such a sensitive place, when he's already got so much. When he's got the odds backed up against, when he's backed up against the wall, quite literally. Just it upsets me, and I feel deeply hurt for Zelensky and the people of Ukraine. Their struggle for existence against a tyrant, against a ruthless dictator, should not be treated like it's a fucking real world question, right? Like, it shouldn't be like reality TV. Like, this war isn't our entertainment, CNN, okay? Fuck your ratings and fuck you. I just so done with that shit. Well, I'm sure if you're watching at this point, you're probably thinking, hasn't this conversation changed a whole lot? Doesn't it seem like Zelensky is no longer trying to curry favor with Donald Trump? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Since it seems that the conversation has rapidly shifted from Zelensky trying to, whether it be through flattery or whether it be through just trying to be cordial, polite, what have you, having to play the politics game. Zelensky is basically no longer trying to see if he can become a part of the negotiations, by capitulating to Donald Trump. He's accepted the fact, essentially, that Ukraine is not going to be involved in these negotiations, which of course is insane, but I think that's the reality that we're in now. It seems that Zelenskyy, to me, has staked the entire future of Ukraine on Europe basically being there to help them out, because it looks like Donald Trump and Putin are going to try to ensure that Ukraine never is a part of NATO. And I would imagine that it's very likely that US aid to Ukraine is going to stop very soon, because Trump is, as we know, he's an extremely fragile man. And when you're no longer in the position of trying to curry favor with Trump, he's very likely to treat you as some sort of enemy. And that's what has seemed to happen here. Let's go ahead and get into this. He's now to the point where he's calling Zelenskyy a dictator, even though President Zelenskyy was duly elected, and it's Ukrainian law that when they are in war, that they do not have elections in their country. They don't hold elections in Ukraine while they're in war. And obviously, they've been invaded. I don't think any of these are disputed facts. So let's watch this quick video from CBS, see what other details they can provide on it.
Into the war in Ukraine. Another one has broken out between Ukraine's president and President Trump.
It began when Mr. Trump accused President Zelenskyy yesterday of starting the war with Russia, which is not true and would surprise even Vladimir Putin, who ordered his army to invade Ukraine.
President Zelenskyy responded by accusing Mr. Trump of echoing Russian propaganda.
Unfortunately, President Trump, who we respect a lot as a leader of the nation that we really respect, the American nation, who supported us all the time, unfortunately, he lives in this disinformation space.
That comment set President Trump off again. He called Zelenskyy a dictator and, adding insult to injury, a modestly successful comedian.
With this rhetoric, it is easy to forget that the United States has been Ukraine's chief ally in the war, which has left 750,000 Ukrainians and Russians, civilians and military, dead or wounded.
And that the U.S. has spent more than $100 billion on the war. That, too, rankled President Trump, who accused Zelenskyy of talking the U.S. into funding a war that could not be won. Margaret Brennan is in Washington. Margaret, what are your sources telling you about this exchange?
Well, John, one senior diplomat told me this amounts to a public decapitation of Zelenskyy by his single most important military and financial backer. It also means the U.S. is helping to end the isolation of Vladimir Putin. As one former Trump official told me, President Trump has long despised Ukraine and Zelenskyy. So now that the Ukrainian president has criticized Mr. Trump, he's using the opportunity to remove him from power. He just doesn't care about the global implications of this conflict, according to a former advisor.
Trump's words sound very similar to what Putin would say, Margaret. So what exactly is going on here?
Very similar. In fact, President Trump is echoing Vladimir Putin's rationale for the war, saying Ukraine started it. Today, Vladimir Putin took the unusual opportunity, as you see there, to actually speak to reporters, and he said Trump is simply now receiving objective information. Now, Vladimir Putin is a dictator, but he called Zelenskyy one, which is what Putin says, and argued that because there weren't elections held, that is why he's a dictator. Now, Zelenskyy would say he suspended elections because 20% of the territory of his country is under Russian military occupation.
Margaret, so this is what President Trump is saying. He's also got diplomats in the field trying to work out these various deals. Are they saying the same kind of stuff?
No. And, John, it's got to be a pretty awkward day
Shocker.
for Keith Kellogg, who is the envoy President Trump sent to Kyiv today. He arrived there to try to broker some kind of diplomatic agreement, and one that he says would end the Russian invasion. But we've heard a lot of conflicting things in recent days from Trump officials that they've walked back. And just a few days ago, you saw President Trump send top national security advisors to Saudi Arabia to meet with Russian officials. The one thing that does seem to be progressing at this point is reopening U.S.-Russia relations.
I mean, there you have it, everybody. Trump is now literally echoing the Russian propaganda talking points about Zelenskyy. Of course, with no evidence, without saying what sort of behaviors or statements Zelenskyy has made that would make him a dictator. I mean, it's very expected when you look at who Trump is and how he handles these things. Trump has had a grudge on Ukraine and Zelenskyy ever since they didn't dig up dirt on his chief political rival in the 2020 election, which is not something that they in any way, shape, or form are obligated to do, especially because after that was looked deeper by, I believe, a congressional committee that was put together by Republicans, if I recall correctly. There was no corruption to be found between Joe Biden and Ukraine or the Ukraine energy company Burisma that he was alleged to have received some sort of payment from. That was all nothing, totally false, totally just out of nowhere, just straight up propaganda. And Trump, of course, I feel like perpetuated this because he holds a grudge against Zelenskyy and he holds a grudge against Ukraine in general, which is why he's basically trying to capitulate to what Putin wants in this situation. But to say that Zelenskyy started the war is completely just deranged. There's no universe in which Zelensky's responsible for this war. That is just ridiculous. And even further, to say he's a dictator is just completely insane. That's just more projection from the likes of Putin and Trump, who are themselves wannabe dictators. Putin, rather, is an actual dictator. Trump is trying really hard to be. But we'll have to see how that pans out when it comes to the court challenges and things like that that are happening in the current administration when it comes to his EOs and whatnot. I do feel for Zelenskyy himself as well as the people of Ukraine. It's a tragedy that Trump is the one who's basically holding the relationship between Ukraine and the USA in the palm of his hand. And I mean, he's like Lenny with the rabbit, dude. He's gonna screw this whole thing up. It's gonna lead to lots of international tensions and trouble for many, many years, depending on how bad it goes. This could be the lighting of a powder keg in Eastern Europe. And it looks like the US is going to be involved in some way, shape, or form. It's very concerning, as it is ridiculous and just completely, as I said earlier, deranged. There's no reason for Trump to suddenly take this posture, except for the fact that he's ill-equipped to be a leader. He's ill-equipped to be a leader. He doesn't know how to stand up for our allies. He constantly fawns over dictators. We're looking pretty cooked, everybody. Hang in there. We are going to continue to cover this conflict and the resolution that is going to be put together and proposed, presumably by Trump and Putin, which of course Zelensky's already indicated he will never accept. And I agree with that completely. Stay tuned. We do stream live on Sundays at about 3 p.m. Central Time. That's going to be at twitch.tv/ramification bros. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe and that like button so that you can stay up to date on the videos we upload here to the channel, helping this channel grow even more. Thank you for watching. I will see you all in the next video.